Tariffs, hot on the news, but what does it mean to you as a CEO? Let's find out. G'day. Are you seeking to be a high-performance CEO or to develop personal leadership and be a CEO of your own life? Then you've come to the right place, because we share real experiences from CEOs for you to learn from. And so you don't miss out, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on all notifications. Let's get into it. Tariffs have certainly been in the news lately, but how do they really affect CEOs and entrepreneurs? Isn't it just something that happens with big business and governments? Well, actually, no. There are many cases when tariffs are going to affect you and your decisions as a CEO. So let's get into it. So what is a tariff? Well, simply it's a tax or a surcharge that is added on to any good that is brought into a country. Now, it can vary depending on the country it's coming from, the amount of the goods, the cost of the goods, whether they come by sea or air or any other number of variations. But essentially, it's always an added cost. So take, for example, the reports of 130% of goods coming out of China into the United States. A good that would cost $100 originally is going to cost $230 with that tariff added. So that's $130 going straight to the government as a form of tax. So what are some of the effects of tariffs? Well, the obvious one is the effect on the consumer, the person that is trying to bring the good in. If you're, for example, bringing in a $100 item, it's now going to be costing you $230. I heard of a recent incident where somebody was bringing in a Porsche, but thanks to the tariffs, there was going to be an extra $60,000 worth of costs before they could go and pick that car up. They decided not to do that. They decided to leave it there because that charge was so high. Now, that's going to have an effect across many, many paradigms. For example, you're going to go to the grocery store and any good that comes in from a country with tariff is going to be more expensive. Now, of course, if things become more expensive, that means you've got less money to go around and spend on other things. This has an effect on us all, because our grocery bill or good that we're buying now costs more, which means we can purchase less. The second obvious effect is those manufacturers in those countries that now have the tariff applied. If, for example, you're manufacturing goods in China and you have to face 130% increase in your costs, you're going to find that your consumers are looking elsewhere, looking for alternatives. So manufacturers are going to be affected with their sales. In those cases where the tariffs are so high, these effects can be dramatic. If their business is dependent very highly on shipping, in this case from China into the United States, they may even be affected and go completely out of business. So manufacturers can be quite seriously affected by this. Another type of company that is affected is an importer. Now, I was recently talking to a company that is an importer of goods, and they decided to hold off on bringing in the next shipment until they understood better what was happening with the tariffs. As the tariffs are changing day by day due to negotiations between the politics in the US and China, they felt it was better to hold off rather than risk very, very high tariff when that container arrives. So importers are affected also. They can't ship product to their consumers because they feel the risks are too high with the unstable nature of a potentially high import tariff. Another group that's affected by tariffs, particularly the changing nature of the tariffs and that instability, are investors. Investors like to be able to predict the future. They like to be able to understand that if they put their money down on day one, on day 100, they're going to get a return. That's an ideal investment. Of course, with the changing nature of the tariffs, investors are holding off. Therefore, it's making it harder for other companies to access capital. So the whole investment market is now affected by tariffs. Another important macro effect is a thing called dead weight loss. This is simply a function of having tariffs. Dead weight loss is effectively driving inefficiencies into a market. Now, you may hear certain politicians who are proponents who open free trade talk about having an efficient market, and it's this dead weight loss that they're seeking to remove. We all prosper as a human race if we can remove things like dead weight loss. It's a little bit like unburnt fuel going out your exhaust pipe in your car. It helps no one, and it actually makes the markets inefficient. So this dead weight loss is something that tariffs incur, and cause economic inefficiencies. Let's have a look at a specific problem that's faced by one particular company, my own company, where we're going to manufacture a product. Now, we had been surveying multiple options, China being one as a manufacturer, United States being another, Thailand, or somewhere in India. These possibilities have their pros and cons, and we work through them. But with the introduction of tariffs, the whole equation has changed. Say, for example, China. We would be able to build the product for, say, $200. Now, we know that we can sell the product at a profit for $400, but by the time it comes into the United States, it's no longer $200, it's more like $460 plus the costs of freight. So already our costs are by far exceeding our ability to sell the product. It really becomes non-viable and actually kills the whole program. Okay, let's consider another option where we're manufacturing here in the United States. And that would be, I guess, the politicians would prefer us to do. And we would have certain preferences for that as well. It means we can get closer to the production, but we still have to bring things in from overseas. For example, doing the tooling and producing the parts and producing certain components or accessing certain components that only come from China. Now, let's say that half of the components, just to make it easy, are going to come from China. So 130% tariff means that there's now $230. That's just for half the components. That bumps our costs up to over $360, giving us only a margin of $40 to play with. Again, really destroying our business opportunity. So it makes it very difficult for us as a company producing a global product to either manufacture in China and sell into the United States, or manufacture in the United States and sell to the local market. So one of our key decisions, and what we're considering right now, is how can we approach the global market and not have to worry about those tariffs. So here's a few ways we're considering. We manufacture in China and we sell to the rest of the world, and we completely ignore the United States. That cuts off a big market for us, but it means at least we can go to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is a big place. We've got all of Europe, Australia, and many other Western countries which would want our product. It means, of course, that the consumer here in the United States misses out. They can't access that product. So although the politicians might be wanting to encourage us to do manufacturing here in the United States, in this case, they're actually only hurting the consumer, their own people, by denying them access to that product. So let's consider another option. Perhaps we manufacture in Thailand or somewhere else where the tariffs are much lower. Let's say there's a 10% tariff coming out of Thailand. Well, here, this is much more attractive to us, but Thailand doesn't have some of the infrastructure that they do in China, and some of the products would still have to come from China into Thailand. We incur certain risks manufacturing in Thailand that we wouldn't in China, and certain on-costs. So instead of our finished product being $200 ex-China, it might be $230 coming out of Thailand, plus a 10% tariff on that. Let's call it $260. So it's cost us more, but it's also driven in more risk because we can't use our ideal manufacturers. And the same thing would apply, say, to India or some of the other places that we've been considering. Another alternative might be to manufacture in Europe, moving product from China to Europe and doing the manufacturing in Europe drives costs and risks. The costs are much higher out of Europe to do production. And also it's another step away. We don't get the advantage of having it close to us. So all in all, these tariffs have created a real problem for us when it comes to manufacturing. We're either going to incur costs, small and high, or we're going to incur risks. And in some cases, we're going to incur both. And who is the ultimate loser? Well, it's companies like us, and it's the consumers here in the United States. So what are the top ways a CEO can deal with or manage their way through the tariff situation? Well, there's three ways I can suggest. Firstly is to completely avoid the tariffs by working in businesses that aren't affected by tariffs. One area is services. If we're using engineers that are offshore, they're not affected by tariffs. If we're doing work locally and using offshore resources, then we are not getting affected by tariffs. So it's avoiding them. The second thing we can do is to minimize the effects of the tariffs. We talked about where we could do production for our product such as we can minimize its effect, moving our production from one place to another, going after different markets and focusing on different markets so that we get around the tariffs. And thirdly is to accept the tariffs. So this may mean increasing your sales prices, adjusting the forecasts down, perhaps even riding out the storm, or just dealing with the tariffs the way they are and adjusting the business models accordingly. It may not be possible to make a profitable business with the tariffs as they are today, but we don't know how they're going to change tomorrow. So rather than just cutting and running to adjust to the tariffs, it may just make sense to wait and see. If you have any comments, please leave them in the descriptions below. We always read them, and we'd like to make new videos that are relevant to those comments. I hope that helps, and thanks for watching.